Aloha. Hey, y'all. What's going on? Happy Sunday. Hope everybody's doing well and hope everything is going your way. Today, I am joined by a special guest, and you've been on a couple times before, haven't you,
Oh yeah.
Scott?
Hmm.
But always just as special as ever. We always have a good time talking. And this is Scott from M&S Woodworks. We have talked about his channel before. We have talked about your projects before. And I want to, before we get going, I have to give a shout out to my buddy Steve over at Harneal Media. Now, if you're even toying with the idea of a website, there is nobody I would recommend over Steve, simply because he does it very well. He is very competitively priced, and you get 100% personalized service. When you deal with Harneal Media, you're dealing with Steve, not some nameless, faceless person in a call center somewhere that you're never going to talk to again. Now, I consider Steve a friend, and he gives everybody 100% personal service, 100% personalized attention. And I don't know how he does everything he does. All I know is he does it very, very well. If you want to start, if you're thinking about a web store so you can offer your products or services to the public at large without paying commissions to some third party website who's listing your competition on the same page as your products, if you're not interested in listing fees and all that, and you want to take control over your web store, Harneal Media, Steve's the guy to talk to. So there's a link to Harneal Media in every video and every live stream on this channel. It's that way for a reason. Do yourself a favor, get over to Harneal Media, click that contact us button, and shoot Steve a message. You'll be glad that you did. And thank you, Steve, for everything you do. I greatly appreciate it. Do yourself a favor and hit up Harneal Media, sponsor of Mark Lindsay CNC.com. All right. Um, we can. I don't know where to start this simply because there are so many ways we could go. I'm gonna cheat here and bring up your website, or not website, your YouTube channel, and show folks some of the things that you're doing here. This tiger and dragon cutting board is absolutely amazing. Um, your inlays and your cutting boards speak for themselves. I think you're most known for your Redneck's Guide to V-Carve Inlays, which I see has 160,000 views. So awesome, number one. Um, but there is so much. This bassinet you made for your grandbaby is something that's going to be treasured for generations. And all I can say is, wow, if you want to look at something that is way beyond a wall hanger or a cutting board, get over there to M&S Woodworks and subscribe to this channel. And I highly recommend this bassinet build. It is beautiful, Scott.
Well, thank you.
Um, chess sets on the rotary axis. Um, I am intrigued by this coffee table you built. It's a multi-layer coffee table using the CNC and your laser. What I want to know is, where did you come up with the idea for that?
Um, it was an accident.
An accident, really?
Yeah, I I had seen the Mandela art before,
Hmm.
even before I had my laser, And I just thought it was so cool and beautiful, and had read about it. And there's actually a guy, I can't, something Robinson, I can't remember his name, but he makes a fine living at it. But he's got a huge laser cutter, and he cuts some like stuff that would go onto an entire wall. And I found that design on Etsy. Believe it or not,
Uh,
there's three or four nice ones on Etsy, but most of them I found are real simple, very simple actually. And so I bought that one, and I now that I have this larger laser, I said I can make something pretty decent size. And my intention was to make some wall art for my daughter.
uh-huh.
And I think I've mentioned this before. I overdo stuff, and it ended up pretty damn heavy. You needed a forklift to lift the thing, and she lives in a small apartment. I'd worried I'd pull the wall down, trying to hang it on the wall. And so in the middle of the video, at once I figured out just how heavy it was going to be, I just shifted gears and put some legs on it. Now it's a coffee
Mhm.
table.
Now it's
So
a okay. So that started out to be a wall hanging.
it did. It did. And I always narrate my videos or even
Hmm.
come up with what I'm going to say after I've documented everything.
Right.
And so it was just an easy segue to pretend like I had intended of doing a coffee table out of the gate. So, the magic of video editing. So,
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Well, that is something I'm kind of. It's good to see I have an ally here. I'm kind of on a one person crusade to show folks who are new to CNC, or even some who are pretty experienced with CNC, that these machines are so much more than sign makers. They are so much more than making stuff to hang up on the wall. So I was real happy to see actual furniture, you know, and I mean, my channel is different in that I have to kind of follow the trends and try to teach the software so I don't get to practice what I preach as much as I'd like
mhm.
to. So that's why I come to folks like you who actually do this.
Well, I'll be
Um,
honest with you. The most powerful thing to me that my CNC does,
mhm.
outside of all the stuff I've made on it, is cutting miters. I mean, you can cut miters just to perfectly. I
Yeah.
have a table saw. You know, I have practiced. I've got a miter saw, compound
Mhm.
miter saw, and I've practiced and practiced and practiced. And everything's got to be 39.3 degrees. When you're cutting, and I've just not been able to get it perfect. But using a large V bit to cut miters with is just the cat's meow, man. If you haven't
Yeah.
tried it, try it. Just buy and for the coffee table, I bought this humongously large V bit that was actually scary. I mean, I didn't realize how big it was. It was 1 inch, you know.
Uh-huh.
But it ripped right through there, made a nice clean cut, and the miters married up just perfectly. So it makes me look good, you
Yeah.
know.
Now, so how do you do that as far as work on is this like for instance the frame on this coffee table, you're standing up your material and you're cutting the miters that way?
No,
Or how are you doing it?
you lay them down flat,
Hmm.
and I use a profile. I just say for instance, and I'm just using nice round numbers here.
Okay.
If you're wanting to build a frame that's 20 inches square
Yeah.
on Vectric, you just put two lines 20 inches apart,
Hmm.
and that is where the V bit will cut. And of
Hmm.
course, you just cut it if you've got a 3/4 inch piece of wood, and you cut it
Hmm.
three quarter inch deep. And if you do four of those, you will
Hmm.
have a perfectly 20 outer diameter square.
Yeah.
Perfectly, the miters fit perfectly. So,
I'd never thought about doing it that way. Maybe I'm a little gun shy because I found that I've got three 90-degree V bits, for example,
mhm.
and I found that one of them is actually 89 degrees.
Hmm,
That 90 degrees is just a nominal thing, and they're being mass produced. I mean, I don't know how many thousand a day they make.
sure.
So it was a case of it's not quite 90 degrees. How am I going to? But I hadn't considered what you're talking about. So,
If my bits are off, and it's a possibility they are, I haven't noticed a difference.
okay.
They haven't made a big deal. And matter of fact, I can't take credit for this. I didn't dream this up.
Hmm.
And forgive me, I can't think of the YouTube channel that I saw this on. If you ever look back and watch my video where I made the box for the chest pieces, the
Yeah,
piece storage,
yeah.
I've listed his. I'm all about giving credit. I don't want to ever think somebody, let somebody think that I dreamt up all this cool stuff. So
Hmm.
I put a link to his, or I didn't put a link, I don't think, but I did show his YouTube channel in my
Okay.
video, and give him credit for the idea. I haven't seen anybody else but him do it other than
Okay.
myself. Of course, there's 77,000 videos out there on CNC stuff. It's quite possible somebody else has done it, but he's
Yeah,
the only other one I've
absolutely.
ever seen done it. So props to him.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And coming up with the idea is one thing, the execution is quite another, as you well
Indeed,
know.
indeed.
So, I mean, I tell folks that I've got more ideas than a tail feather on a turkey farm. It's just I can't get to them all. So,
Sure.
seeing somebody execute it, it's like wow.
Yeah.
So, now Martin Pearson has a comment. Says he does the same thing, but sometimes he'll leave an onion skin so that the frame kind of folds around that miter. Have you played with that any at all?
I have not, but I've thought about it. I've sincerely thought about it. What are those called? I've seen they make coffee tables, and where they'll cut about every quarter inch. They won't cut all the way through the wood, but they'll
Hmm.
cut down and just leave a minute amount of skin on the other side.
Yeah,
And that way, when you open up the doors, they fold around. There's a name for that, and I can't for life of me
yeah.
remember it. But um,
The
I
only thing I can think of is kerf cuts, but I'm not sure that that's
well, it
exactly
is
what you
kerf
mean.
cuts, but this
Hmm.
particular cut in the mini kerfs,
Hmm.
there's a phrase for that, and I can't remember
Okay.
what it is.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody in the comments will come up with
Yeah, hope
it.
so.
So, okay. Um, Before we get to a topic that I'd like to talk about with you, there was a question earlier. You'll have to bear with me, folks. This is a new streaming software that I'm using, a new streaming platform. It's called EV Mux. One of the problems with EV Mux is the chat before we actually go live doesn't appear in EV Mux. So I can't put a little star and find save your comments before the broadcast actually starts. So I've got it open over here in the live chat from YouTube, and it's a question from Butch Miller, and he says that we have discussed the use of end grain for inlays, but what consideration does Scott have for preparing his end grain inlay material? I asked for a little bit more specific. He says, I do use end grain. It's been my experience in talking with others that they initially don't go to end grain because they don't understand the benefits, especially regarding chip out. So, um, you do some pretty detailed inlays. What is the major reason you go straight to end grain?
From a technical point of view, it's just way more forgiving when you have very small details. If you're doing something large like a square or just a circle or something that doesn't have any sharp corners in it, you can do side grain, but you can't get very detailed in it because if you got something coming to a point, you're going to chip out that corner every time. At least it's been my experience. End grain is far more forgiving. Of course, everybody here, if you've worked with wood, you know how the old description of wood. The grain is like straws, a bundle of
Yeah.
straws. And if you think about cutting, you know, you're just cutting the individual straws that you need. Whereas if you lay them all sideways, you're cutting down the side of them. Well, here's a better explanation: a cross cut versus a rip in a table saw. You
Hmm.
know, a cross cut is hell on a saw blade.
Hmm.
Because it's cutting across all that grain. Versus if you turn it and do a rip, it's a much cleaner cut, easier cut. Doesn't take as such a toll on your saw blade. Same thing with
Hmm.
the ingrain cutting board and whatnot. Now, from a personal preference, I love the patterns that you can get. If
Yeah,
I end up
I
cutting
agree.
the blanks from my cutting board, I'll make 1 inch squares, and you don't want to just throw them all together willy nilly before I glue them up. I'll actually look down the side and I'll flip this one to, and sometimes you get lucky and you can match up some wavy grain in it.
Yeah.
And then after the fact, end grain is very much sought after, at least for cutting boards,
Hmm.
uh, to cut on because they're more knife friendly. They'll actually
Yes.
help the knife hold the edge. That's why any serious chefs or anything, if they're cutting, a butcher block is always end grain.
Hmm.
Just because it lasts longer, it's easier on the knife, those kind of things. So I think there's more pros and cons. One of the major cons being it's expensive. You have a ton of waste. If you cut anything in grain because of the multiple cuts you have to make. But you know,
And it takes time. It takes time to
oh, it does.
cut it
Yeah.
up, glue it up,
It'll
surface it
double
flat.
your project time. Yeah.
Yes, very, very much so. Very much so. The As far as the cutting boards are concerned, you're 100% right. We have a caterer in the family and a chef in the family, and they will all tell you that that is their board of choice. And it's simply because of that. If you got a handful of dowels, you're cutting down in between
Mm-hmm.
those fibers. You're not trying to cut across those fibers.
Right.
And to a man, they have told me, ain't no way they're screwing up a $200 chef's knife on a $10 plastic cutting board.
Mm-hmm.
Give me end grain, or I'm using your knife. I'm not using mine.
That's right.
So, it does take more time, and there is a lot of waste. You can mitigate that to a point depending upon how picky you want to be. If you're Scottish like me, you know, I say that copper wire was invented by two Scotsmen arguing over a penny, but that's kind of the way it is. I will find a way to use waste wherever possible.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I was telling you earlier, I forgot I had them. I just found a big tub of ebony piano keys that I have. And I don't know what the heck else to do with them. They're going to end up in a cutting board
Mm-hmm.
just simply because why not? You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the that's why end grain cutting boards are so expensive, is because they do take a lot of time, they do
Mm-hmm.
take a lot of material, and there is a lot of waste. So, I mean, but that's why you don't see end grain cutting boards going for $20.
That's
It's
fact.
just not possible.
Mm-mm.
And when it comes to inlays, you're just not able to get the level of detail that you get with a face grain, edge grain uh, cutting board. You just can't get those details.
You could, but not without a lot of heartache. I
Mhm.
think Browenwood did he did actually a very large side grain inlay.
Mhm.
I think it was a headless horseman or something. This was 2 or 3 years ago,
Mhm.
and it was very detailed. But I think I remember, I can't remember if he wrote something in the comments or if I heard him talk about it. But he said that was one of the most, the biggest headache he'd ever had is making that because of all the tear out and the difficulty of getting it keeping it nice. So
Yeah.
I'm lazy and have a zero drama tolerance. It ain't worth it to me. I'm ingrained all the way. You
Yeah,
know.
I was surprised at how forgiving end grain actually is, because it will hold. I mean, if you take something like a piece of maple or a piece of oak and you're trying to cut around a ridge that's real narrow, that end grain will stay right there.
Mm-hmm.
But that edge grain is going to chip out or break. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's kind of like using pockets and trying to create a sign that has raised letters.
Mm-hmm.
You're fine to a certain point, but it's real easy to start losing like the center of a letter or chipping off the end of an E or an R or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But with end grain, it just doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It works so much better.
Very forgiving, yeah.
Mhm. So, um, one of the topics I wanted to talk to you about was um, going back to your your tiger and dragon inlay board. Now, in your video, you showed and you said that you had some big time issues with that board. You had some problems, I guess some pieces cracked on you, and there was some frustration in there.
You know, I haven't kept count, but I'm thinking I'm around the 30ish mark of ingrain cutting boards with inlays in them,
Hmm.
and not all of them are perfect. I have some that turn out just absolutely flawless, and you have some that have some little ohs. But this thing, it was like every step. You know, the cutting board gods just did not want this to be made.
Hmm.
Matter of fact, little secret here. That was actually my second attempt. My first attempt when I cut the the what I called the background when I did that Wingate. I did the same thing I did at the end of the video. I cut it out and went and visited my kids for a week,
Hmm.
and come back and it had cracked up the center. You
Oh
know, and I'm
man.
like, okay, stupid me. I won't do that again. You
Hmm.
know, and then throughout the video, like when I broke the Osage orange inlay, you know, I dropped it on the floor. I may or may not have said a couple cuss words when that happened, but you know, just little things that I didn't even feel like were video worthy. It was just every step. It was an aggravation. I love making inlays, man. I love it. This has about turned me off of it. I think I was going. It's going to be a little while before I make another one. I'm going to try something
Really?
else. Yeah, I
Mm.
I had spoke to you earlier. I think I've got my mind set on another chess set.
Oh,
Uh,
sweet.
yeah, I've got another found another chess set that's even more intricate than the last one. It will be a challenge
Hmm.
to try to get it cut, especially the night. The night's always
Hmm.
a challenge. I discussed
Right.
that to you, but I think I'm gonna set my sights on that for my next
Okay.
project.
Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see it. I mean, you always do fantastic work, so I mean, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Um, on the subject of all the trouble you had with this dragon, though, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here.
No, 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 no.
Um, I think 8 Center sums it up best. Just my opinion here, but there's more value in teaching how to turn mistakes into something rather than deceive an audience in making them think it was intentional. Just don't tell the customer, though.
You know, dude, I actually had this conversation with somebody the other day, and they had voiced the same opinion. They were very appreciative that I, you know, showed my little ohs. And I keep going back to Brodenwood because he's, you know, at least the big hit on YouTube as far as inlay cutting boards. I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever seen him put a mistake on there, and there ain't no way in hell that he had that every board he makes is perfect. Ain't happening, you know. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that it's appreciated that I'm willing to put my stuff on there, you know, my O's.
I've been told by many people that they like it when I show my mistakes because it's like you're talking about Browenwood. There ain't no way. The only place everything works perfectly the first time is in YouTube. That's the
Mm-hmm.
only place it happens.
Yeah.
because we've got the power of editing. We can cut all that stuff out and just never mention it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if at first you don't succeed, eliminate any evidence of the attempt.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll fully admit I have cut stuff up out of the video that was just a complete brainless, idiotic mistake, you
Hmm.
know, like, that was just stupid. It
Hmm.
didn't, it wasn't technical. It was just me being a mindless boob. And
Hmm.
I'll use, better than that, And so
Yeah.
I may eliminate that or start over and, but things like this, the cracks, I
Hmm.
thought that was valuable information for folks to
Yeah.
know. And matter of fact, I've gotten a tons of questions about it since the video, comments and email,
Yeah.
asking what I would have done differently. You know,
Hmm.
your board is going to move,
Hmm.
even after you seal it. I mean, it's wood.
Yeah.
Wood continues to live and breathe forever. But my mistake was not sealing it at all, and it moved at such an extreme is what
Hmm.
caused my problems. I think had I just bit the bullet and sealed it, at least put some oil on it, before I left to go out of town, as I mentioned in the video, I
Hmm.
don't think it would have moved near as much. When I got back, I put the board on my CNC bed, which is about the flattest, part anything in my shop,
Yeah.
and you could have rolled an 1/8 inch bit underneath it. That's how
Oh,
much it was
wow.
warped. And I suspect though, because it rained while I was gone,
Hmm.
and this was a couple of days after the rain, I have a suspicion that it may have warped even more than that,
Yeah.
and it was just starting to settle back down when I got home and found it. Because that's the worst cracks I've ever had. I think a couple years ago I had one board that kind of cracked along the edges, but
Hmm.
I've never had one that just spider webbed like that. And so it had to have moved and folded up
Yeah.
really really bad for that to happen. So I think by sealing it, it's going to move, like I said, but
Hmm.
I don't think it would have moved to the point where it was so catastrophic.
Well, now let me ask you, what would you have sealed that with?
Mineral oil.
Just mineral oil?
Yeah, I mean, I would. I don't think wax has anything to do with the sealing of the wood. The preparation, the mineral oil is the magic, and you
Yeah.
want to saturate it as much as you can. Now it has a technical reason for the cutting board,
Hmm.
operation. But
Yeah.
as far as be it a cutting board or a coffee table or whatever, when you seal it, you are cutting off that oxygen,
Yeah.
you know, and the moisture,
And
excuse me,
I was going to say, especially the moisture.
yeah,
Yeah.
the oxygen and the moisture, and just keeping it stabilized. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Okay. 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 Um, I the people that have talked to me about showing your mistakes and this, that, and the other, they say they get more value out of that because they learn how to recover from those mistakes.
Oh yeah.
And I think you including that in this video gave, well, number one, it gives people who have made mistakes a little bit of hope. Number one, it's like, okay, I'm not the only one that does this.
Hmm.
But how did he fix it? And I think that's more valuable than getting it right the first time, every single time in
Hmm.
every single video.
Yeah. Well, my
You know,
God, that Dragon Tiger board, I probably had, and this is probably a little bit of an embellishment, but I probably had 350, $400 tied up in just hardwood,
yeah, that's
and
easy to
so.
do.
So when I found all those cracks, the first dumb idea that I had, but it only lasted about a second, was, "Oh God, I got to start over." And I'm like, "No, hell no,
Yeah,
I can't afford that."
yeah,
I love YouTube. I love making these videos and I love the energy I get from my audience, but I have yet to make enough money from YouTube to cover my investment into
yeah,
making a YouTube video.
yeah.
If I was Mr. Beast or some of these other guys that make 100
Oh
grand,
man.
it'd be easy.
Uh,
Oh heck yeah, man! But this is all out of my pocket, so
yeah,
I have got to find a way to fix it. You know.
yeah. I agree, especially with prices nowadays, because it is real easy to spend a lot of money on wood.
Black walnut is about $11 a board foot down here where I live now, and so it's a chunk of change. You
Well,
know,
you're a little bit lucky because that was normal price for me before lockdown.
really.
For rough cut, I could find walnut. Well, it doesn't grow out here. This is softwood country. I'm in
Mm,
Oregon. You want Douglas fir? You want pine? You want cedar? I can get it to you so cheap your head will spin.
mm-hmm.
I framed the hardscaping in my yard with 3x6 cedar for 70 cents a foot. It's that cheap. But the so everything has to be shipped here. So I was paying for rough cut $10 a board foot. Surface 3 size was, depending upon how much they had, was $12 to $14 a board foot.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're getting it for 11, that's still a bargain on my in my book, because it's the price has gone up. So
Well, my brother lives in North Carolina, which is where there's a lot of black walnut, and I think it's
mhm.
still like eight and a half bucks a board foot up there.
Oh man.
And I went up there recently to visit him, but I wasn't in
Mhm.
my pickup truck. I would
Yeah.
have loaded down,
Mhm.
if I'd have been of the mind to do it. But you're right, that's where you live.
Mhm.
They have to truck it down here too, and especially the exotic stuff. It's coming from overseas. That
Yeah.
Wingate, man, the Wingate is expensive. Wingate is about 15.50 a board foot.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
so.
get it. I luck out on the exotics because I live between two major ports. I got Seattle
Hmm.
to the north, actually three major ports. I got Seattle to the north. I got San Francisco, and then Long Beach and all down everything down in Southern California. So they got to go past me to get to the bigger markets. If it's shipped into Seattle, they got to take it south past me to get to California. If it's coming in from Long Beach, they got to go past me to get it up to Portland or Seattle or
Hmm.
wherever. So, like, I was getting pre-lockdown, I was getting Purple Heart for the same price as Cherry.
Oh
Six
wow.
$6 a board foot was not normal. Wenge, I think I paid $8 a board foot for it. So I get the exotics at a fairly reasonable price because it's just expensive to ship wood
Yeah.
over land. It really is. So by the time it gets back to you, you're paying for all that freight, and it adds up.
Well, you'd mentioned you saving up those piano keys to make a,
Mhm.
a cutting board with ebony. I don't know if you priced ebony lately. I've never even held a piece of ebony. I can't get it anywhere down here. I've looked at it online, but it's pricey stuff. And I had thought about buying a few pieces to make my next
Mhm.
chess set out of.
Mhm.
Because a lot of your chess pieces, the dart pieces, are made out of ebony wood. You
Right.
know, that's going to be pretty expensive. So
Yeah.
hang on. And a matter of fact, when you said it, I thought, well, maybe I'll go knock over a piano store or something.
Well,
Rip out all the black keys to get my ebony wood. Um,
when they were doing the maker fairs a few years back, my wife got invited to a maker fair to uh, demonstrate spinning and weaving at a maker fair here locally. And I went with her. I'm just there to set up the tent and hold on to stuff. And one of the things they did was they had an old piano that was going to the dump out there, and they had a guy standing there next to it with a toolbox and just take apart this piano, take it apart. Now, the guy running that, he called dibs on the ivory keys. And I said, "What you going to do with those ebony keys?" He says, "Nothing." I says, "Okay." I got a hold of one of the guys running the wood shop, got a chisel, and I went out and I popped off all those ebony
there
keys.
you go. I don't blame you, dude.
So, it's you find stuff, and I'm not down to dumpster diving, but if somebody's throwing away ebony, I'm not above it. Heck,
All
I'm
of a
not
sudden,
proud.
wheel work for hardwood.
That's it. That's me. Think about it. I think I ought to do that.
Yeah.
Um, Now uh, the other thing about that is you can go too far simply because I've got buckets and buckets of scrap over here that most people would just toss in the fire.
Hmm.
But if I'm making an inch and a half thick cutting board, to me, a piece an inch and a half thick, I'll glue it up. I'll make a panel out of that.
Hmm.
I don't care. I'm not proud. Yeah, I've got more glue up time, but I got enough clamps. I'm fine with it.
Hmm.
So, um, let's see here. Rich Bratcher is saying, what about gluing an end grain project onto a horizontal grain board to reduce the risk of breaking or cracking, i.e., do a pocket cut on the bottom, then glue horizontal boards under it?
I think that's an excellent idea, but I think you're increasing the opportunity for it to crack. I have tried putting an ingrain panel inside of a side grain panel, and it's one thing, when wood cups, you have two opposing boards, but it's kind of a accident waiting to happen because if you've ever made an ingrain panel, it doesn't necessarily just cup like a normal bud. I mean, it may go every which way, Whereas if you built just a regular panel, it's all going to cup in a uniform manner, So you've got the chaos of the ingrain and warping going every which way inside of another piece of board. I don't know. I've done it before, and I've noticed around the edges they wasn't horrible, but they wasn't as tight. Wasn't a good tight seam after a while.
Uh,
So,
they're they're gonna expand and contract at different rates. It's almost always considered a bad idea because of that. Because it is like you say, the end grain. Think about it in terms of if a if a board is going to swell. I've never seen a board get thicker. I've seen it get wider and narrower. And that's about it. So you cut off pieces of end grain, they're going to swell and expand and contract at one rate. And now you've got a different grain underneath it or beside it. It's not going to prevent that end grain from absorbing that moisture, expanding and contracting, but you've restricted it. So now you've got tensions fighting each other. Something's going to give. I guess the basic rule is wood is going to move, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So all you can do is work with it. But Rich, that's why you see end grain products so thick, is to prevent basically just shattering. Like I've seen cheese boards that are a half inch thick. I would never make anything like that out of end grain, just simply because that's an accident that's found a place to happen. It's just waiting for a convenient time. It's gonna break. So, you know, I won't even take a face grain and put a side grain next to it because they're going to expand and contract at different levels. That's why if you look at a breadboard table, the edges very rarely match up with that where that breadboard end is because the table's going to expand and contract widthwise and that breadboard edge is not going to. It's not going to get longer as it swells. It's going to get wider. So that's why they're pegged in, but they're not glued on. So let's see. 8 Center says there is a potential but expensive workaround: vacuum stabilizing with epoxies. Yeah, probably adds 3 times the production process, not to mention cost. Not to mention the cost of just the tooling.
you
Do you
know,
have a vacuum chamber you could put a tabletop in?
well, you know what? I don't know if you would 100% need a vacuum table because you're going to have, and let me just jump to my point. I made a chessboard
Mhm.
quite a while ago, and if you watch my last chessboard video, I actually made a pocket, and then the chess field, the playing field, I actually made it like an inlay that would fit into the pocket, and I used glue. You know,
Yeah.
I made one years ago, and I actually tried it with epoxy. I put the chest field down in there and poured a decent amount of epoxy, at least where I know it would reach and hold the chest field and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I left it laying on a table. Now all this is in grain.
Hmm.
Most of my chessboards, I make everything in grain, the base, the playing field, and
Hmm.
I left it overnight. And I come back the next day after work, so it had
Hmm.
sat there probably 18, 20 hours. It shocked me. Now the base was probably inch and a half, 2 inches thick. That epoxy had weeped down through the ingrain onto my table,
Yeah.
and when it was permanently, now frozen to my table down there, I didn't think that I thought the epoxy was so thick that it wouldn't have went down through that ingrain.
Hmm.
Blew my mind. But it
Yeah.
did bring up an idea. What if I did that in a controlled thing?
Hmm.
Whereas I could, like to say this cutting board, for instance, if
Hmm.
I could get it saturated with epoxy top and bottom, you know, I think in the end the epoxy would stabilize it, super stabilize it, and it wouldn't move near as much, and would probably last another 100 years, and it would already, properly cared for.
Well,
And they're
there.
making food grade epoxy now,
Oh
so
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, most of these, I think just about all, except the polyester resins. I think all of the epoxies are food grade after the cure.
yeah,
Um, uh, they are inert. The dirty little secret that not a lot of manufacturers want anybody to know is almost all of the epoxies that we're using are urethane based, which is why you can spray a polyurethane finish over it rather than doing a flood coat if you so desire, you know. And rather than polishing and everything, you can just hit it with urethane. It'll be nice and pretty.
hmm
But yeah, I learned real quick that it's real easy to epoxy things together that you didn't want epoxied together, and
some tough stuff.
the only way to get it off is to break it. And that's just it,
hmm
because there ain't a chemical out there that's gonna touch that cured epoxy.
Well, the reason why I said I don't think you need a vacuum chamber is in my limited experience with epoxy, and I've got a couple of gallons out there now I have in case I need it or want to use it. But I
Hmm.
think the vacuum chamber is when you need that transparency. If
Yeah.
you, if, I don't think it would matter in the wood. I mean, you'll have air bubbles, seep
Well,
up through the wood, but
epoxy, when it comes to epoxy in a vacuum chamber, and Peter Brown did an experiment with this. He used a pressure pot and he did a vacuum chamber. When it comes to epoxy, you want to use a pressure pot because what you're doing is you're trying to force the bubbles out or crush them so small that you won't see them. And like I did all this kind of thing. That is walnut shavings in blue epoxy, and that was done in a pressure pot. And there ain't air bubble one. There's not air bubble one in that. And I've got to get this project finished. And that is epoxy planer shavings and just pieces of scrap walnut thrown in for pen blanks, which I haven't done anything with. But the vacuum chamber tends to, it tries to pull the air out, but it also creates nucleation sites where it just foams up even more. So pressure for epoxy, vacuum for stabilizing epoxy. The reason that's done is to pull the air out of the wood and impregnate that wood with that epoxy. And but stabilizing epoxies are different than casting epoxies. They're heat activated, so you pull them out of that vacuum chamber, the pieces out of the vacuum chamber, and you put it in the oven at like 375 or something like that, and it sets that epoxy. But you would need a tank, oh my God, huge, if you're going to do like a tabletop or something. So, Ray Dixon wants to know, do you ever use walnut oil on your cutting boards?
didn't know there was such a thing. I've never heard of walnut oil. The only thing I've ever used on cutting board is just good old fashioned mineral
Yeah.
oil. And I actually used good old fashioned beeswax up
Mhm.
until this last board, and I had run out of beeswax, and I order on Amazon's king. I was ordering my stuff off Amazon, and the
Yeah.
walrus oil popped up.
Hmm.
The walrus oil name brand wax,
Yeah.
and so I
Yeah.
bought that. It's about three times what just good old fashioned beeswax is, and I
Yeah.
noticed a slight difference. I mean,
Yeah.
it tends to it's a little thicker. It does buff up a nice shine, but is it night and day different between good old fashioned beeswax? I didn't notice it, and the $35 I paid for it,
Mhm.
I don't know if it warrants that much compared to just
Yeah.
beeswax, but especially if you're going to use it as a cutting board, you
Hmm.
know, just the maintenance. If you think about the long term maintenance, it'd just be cheaper just to buy the
Yeah.
plain
Um,
Jane mineral oil. And but
you,
now to answer your question, walnut oil, I had never heard of it. I'll look for it. Somebody suggested tongue oil to me the other day, and I've
yeah,
read up on
that's
it.
what I use. That I
I've
use
never
tongue oil.
used tongue oil on
Now,
a cutting board.
mineral oil is also cheap. You can get
Yeah,
a this is a pint. I think I paid $3 for it at
yeah.
Wally World
I buy them
over
in
in
the
the
gallon jugs. I
farm.
think they're $7 or $8 for a gallon.
Yeah, you can get it
That
over in the
gallon,
pharmacy.
yeah, a gallon lasts me a long time. So,
Yeah. Um, I I made my wife a real nice chaos pattern cutting board, and I soaked it in walnut, or excuse me, in mineral oil, and did the beeswax, and it buffed up nice and pretty. Looks great. It took about 3 days for mineral oil to stop seeping out of the different woods. Have different uh,
hmm
capacities for holding that oil. So it took a while for it to quit weeping out of there. I'd have to hit it every day, a couple times a day with a paper towel
well,
to
somebody asked
absorb
me
all
the
that
other
oil.
day how I oil my boards. Do I soak them? I see a lot of guys. They may have these big vats of mineral oil and they'll dunk them in there, and
Yeah,
that must be nice. I
yeah,
don't have that, so I'll
me
go ahead
neither.
and put the feet on the
Hmm.
bottom of my cutting board and set it on my shop table, and I'll pour the oil on top and let it sit for a couple of days. Walk back and pour it again, and it will eventually, like I was talking about with the epoxy, it'll seep through that end grain,
Oh
and I
yeah.
know that when it's dripping out of the bottom, it's
Hmm.
saturated, and then I leave it alone and let it dry, you know,
Hmm.
and then I'll put the wax on it. So that's how I've always done my boards, and it's served me well so
Yeah.
far.
My cutting board guru was MTM Wood. That's who I learned everything I know
That
about
is the
making.
godfather of cutting boards, man.
Yeah, that's the guy I learned everything I know about end grain cutting boards from is
Yes.
him.
Yes.
And
I watched him long before I ever discovered Browenwood. And I think
yep,
Browenwood admitted that that's where he got his inspiration was from MTM Wood.
yep. Andre, I've emailed back and forth to him. He's in Russia, so the language barrier is kind of there, but he's given me a lot of good tips. Um, and basically what he does is he has a tank that he made that he soaks them in. He
hmm
drops the board in there, makes sure it's completely covered. He says he leaves it anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds, takes it out, puts it on a rack, and lets it drain for a minimum of 6 hours. Then he puts it back in there for another 10, 15 seconds, then takes them up, put them in that rack, and
He
lets it
leaves it in there for
drain.
seconds only, really.
Yeah, just 10 to 10. Uh, the initial one and the initial dunk is 5 to 10 seconds. Then
I
he'll
had no
take it
idea.
out and he puts it in a rack and lets it drain for 6 hours. Then the second one, he leaves it in there for 10 to 15 seconds, a little bit longer. Takes it out and lets it drain overnight. And then he says it's ready for wax after that.
MTM is where I got my inspiration for my chessboards
Hmm.
because he makes most of his
Yeah.
chessboards are ingrain. And
Oh,
so,
he makes some beautiful
oh,
chessboards
yeah,
too. Oh, they're
big time.
absolutely gorgeous. Eight Center wants to know what tonnage and brand is your press? I'm looking for a smaller one, but a good brand.
Mine is a 20-ton from Harbor Freight. Um, I'm not pushing out bearings or anything like that. It
Mhm.
works beautifully for what I use it for. I had to, if you've seen my videos, you can see it looks kind of like a Frankenstein. I had to, converted a bit using, I screwed together several pieces of 3/4 inch plywood, kind of keep it as stiff and rigid as possible. But it wouldn't take no time to take it all apart and turn it into a shop press again. I think the reason why I bought the 20-ton is actually for the size, because I don't know if y'all noticed, this is another magic of editing. I had a hard time fitting that damn cutting board into the press,
Mm-hmm.
because I had like an eighth of an inch off each side from the post, because I didn't think about that. It was a beautiful coincidence. I cut this thing at 22 inches square. I didn't even not even think about it fitting in my press, and it like not have fit. So, so mental image now. What I make now, I'm limited to make sure it
Yeah.
can fit in the press. So,
I've got the exact same press sitting here staring at me. I can reach over and smack it right here.
right.
I put mine on a roll around base. It's on casters, so I can pull it out away from the door and use it, and then push it back to get it out of the
It's a
way.
heavy thing, especially
It's
what I added, just because I had it.
hmm
I had a piece of 3/4, or excuse me, half-inch steel plate,
hmm
that just happened to be perfectly the size. I think it's about 24 inches square.
hmm
That thing probably weighs over 100 pounds, and I've got it as the bottom base, and where
Oh,
I put my plywood on top. So
yeah.
mine's heavy. It's super heavy, and I didn't put it on wheels because I was scared to put it on wheels because of how heavy it was.
Well, the only reason mine's on wheels is because I don't have room. Like I said, I'm in a 12 by 16 garden shed,
Mm,
and this is in front of. I've got double doors on the front of my shop, and this one is in front of the captive door.
mm-hmm,
So I've got to be able to move it if I need to use that door.
mm-hmm. Well, my
So
space is limited in my shop, and even though I don't have wheels on this thing, my press doubles as a shelf when not in use.
yeah,
So
every horizontal surface is a shelf. You should see
yeah,
my table saw. I I can't even see the blade. My table saw is piled up high. It's an endless game, but you do what you got to do. Let's see here. There was a couple of questions up here further. This is another thing that I'm not really sure about the this new system is the fact that I cannot mark.
I saw
There
a
we
question.
go. Go ahead.
I saw a question. Somebody was asking about, like, I'm assuming it was the new Rotary for Onefinity.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
I can't remember. I think it was further up. Um, maybe
Now,
maybe maybe they'll ask it again and get it in.
yeah, I'll look for it though. But this is one I did want to answer. Sam Spade wants to know: would a downcut V bit eliminate fuzzy cuts? I've not seen one, but an angle blade seems like it would work well. Um, Cadence Manufacturing, the creator of the Jenny bits, and in fact, I think I'd have to look it up, but if you look up Jenny bit, you'll find his website. He makes downshear V bits. They're downcut V bits,
I have a
but I
60 degree, and that's wonderful.
but I think the smallest he makes is 30 degree,
Mm,
and that can be used for some end grain inlays if you're not real detailed. But to get the kind of things that Scott or Browenwood is doing, I mean, you use a tapered ball nose, right?
mm,
So you're looking at like a 10, 12 degree uh, angle on that
yeah,
by the
that's right
time
at
you,
little over 10. I think it's 5.15 side
yeah,
angle. So yeah,
side angle, yeah.
yeah, it's little over 10.
I have used 15-degree V bits. They work very well.
Mm,
But just about everybody who is doing the really, really detailed stuff is using a tapered ball nose.
mm.
So you've to get that real fine, fine detail, you're not going to get it with a 90-degree or a 60-degree V bit.
And you may have the detail at first using like a 60 degree or even a 30 degree, but you're only cutting at a very minuscule depth,
Yes,
and you'll sand away those details.
you'll sand it right off. Exactly,
Yeah,
it's not cutting deep enough.
right.
So on the
So,
negative, on the pocket or on the plug,
mm.
It's just not doing it.
That's
But
right.
yeah, and there may be news on that front. We'll see what happens. Now I'm looking to see about that rotary axis
I just seen
question.
Center. He just asked right there at the second from the last.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was asking someone about the rotary they just ordered that gets here this week, but feel free to share your thoughts on it, Scott. I do think it looks awesome. I don't know which rotary, but you have one, right?
I do. It's
Obviously.
Yeah, I have the Onefinity machine, and they announced the Elite series, and
Hmm.
the Mazzo had the fifth axis, 5 axis capable, but it was going to be about a year or more before they would release an upgrade for the standard Onefinity, which is what I had, and because I have no patience, I
Hmm.
went ahead and bought everything from straight from Mazzo, and I upgraded my machine, which has got what got me on YouTube. My very first video is talking about my upgrade to the Mazzo
Hmm.
motion controller. And one of the main reasons I did that because I wanted a rotary axis on there bad,
Hmm.
and so I bought one off of Amazon. Fairly cheap. I think I paid $300
Yeah.
for it, and it's worked beautifully. It's worked beautifully. I had to build my own base for it and whatnot, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I like that. And I tried to model my base after the Avid CNC. I mean,
Hmm.
those are beautiful. You know,
Yeah.
I think you have one, don't you?
I've got one sitting back there. You can
I
just
see it.
barely make out the
Yeah,
tailstock, and there's the chuck right there.
yeah. Mine's
Um,
not as fancy, but it works. To answer your question, Senator, about the new, I think it looks cool. It's a
mhm,
little smaller than what I thought it would be, but that's not a big deal. You don't need a lot of power, in a rotary axis.
yeah,
It's not like a lathe. It's going to be indexing more than anything.
right.
Excuse me. So I think it's a wonderful offering, especially
Mhm,
if it's a plug and play deal and it fits easily on the bed. I
yeah.
had to do some major surgery to get mine.
Yeah, and that's a consideration that not a lot of people.
Forgive me for a second. I'm having an electrical catastrophe here. Hold on.
Uh-oh. That is something that not a lot of people take into consideration is the fact that it is going to take up space. You're going to either lose capacity in X or Y when you have that rotary axis
Mm-hmm.
mounted, depending upon how you mount it. Now, I have mine set up along my Y, so it's parallel with my Y axis because I don't think I've ever done anything wide enough. I don't cut half sheets of plywood. I don't cut half sheets of MDF or anything. And this machine it's got a 50-inch wide capacity, but I've never used it.
Mm-hmm.
I have, however, used long along the X, or excuse me, along the Y. So I thought I would rather sacrifice capacity along the Y than on the X. So, it's just personal preference there. It really is. And Steve on the ball, there is the Cadence Bits, Cadence Manufacturing, home of the Jenny Bit and home of the Downshear V Bits. I'll put that link down in the description as soon as we're finished live here. It's Jim Brown that's getting his rotary axis tomorrow on his, I believe, Onefinity. So he was asking how's the learning curve on that rotary?
Depending on what you want to do, Jim, you can easily download a cylindrical model and put you a blank in there and cut it loose. If you've done any 3D carves if you're using Vectric, if you've done any 3D carves in Vectric, it's not too difficult, but it can get a little hairy. Um, the bad part about Vectric software, that's a bad way to say it. One limitation in Vectric software, how about
There
that?
you go. There we
Um,
go.
Is that people don't realize that when you're cutting something on a rotary, it's not really a 4-axis cut. You know,
Right.
it's not a real 3D cut because you're that X. Like mine is mounted parallel with X axis, so it's going to cut back and forth on the X axis, and if anything is outside of that, pair line right there
Hmm.
that the bit can't see, you're going to have an undercut. So
Yeah.
you have to come up with some pretty clever workarounds to get the undercuts. And I have been guilty of doing the rotary operation, and then coming back and doing a normal 2D cut, 3D cut rather, excuse me, machining operation on each side to get the undercuts.
Hmm.
It gets how me and Mark discussed this earlier. How bad do you want the part?
Yeah.
You may have to do a little extra work to get there, and
Hmm.
so the learning curve can be fairly steep, depending on what you want to do.
Yeah. And a lot of it is up here, at least with me. When I first started with rotary on my old machine, which I no longer have, it was getting it all set up and converting to degrees because you're no longer working with
Uh,
well, you are working with inches in the physical size of the piece of material you're putting in there, but after that you're working in degrees of rotation and number of rotations.
mhm.
My rotary guru is a gentleman by the name of Milo Scott, and if you're on Facebook, go look for Milo Scott Studio on Facebook.
I've learned a ton from
And
Milo.
I will link that. In fact, let me write that down. Got to move my epoxy stuff here. I will link Milo Scott Studio in the description here when we're done. That man is an absolute wizard with the rotary axis. Now, it requires a little bit of playing with processors. That's fairly
Mhm.
easy to do. But that man will cut out a table leg, beautiful table leg, early American style, what have you, with lots of, ball shapes in it and pretty tapers and things like that. He'll cut one of those out in a minute and a half. Not a
Mhm.
single 3D component in it.
What makes Milo so amazing is a lot of the stuff that he does, he has figured out how to manipulate the G code.
Yep.
A lot of the stuff that he does isn't even a rotary operation. It's a
Hmm.
simple one-sided
Yeah.
profile
Yeah.
cut. That's what blows my mind.
Yeah.
Is he's able to do what he does without it's a hack. He's learned how to hack Vectric.
Hmm.
You know,
Oh, big time. And there he
yeah.
is. Steve's on the ball again. Milo Scott Studio. I'll put that link. That's like I said down in the description of this video as soon as we're done. But you're absolutely right. He's doing a profile cut on a 2D vector.
Hmm.
But what he's done is he's played with the G code to where just before the first thing that G code says is to move off of the center of that piece by
Hmm.
however far, then it'll drop down and the rotary will start spinning like a lathe. And
Hmm.
then that bit, it's a long straight bit, just a half inch diameter straight bit. It'll come in and start cutting along that edge and
Hmm.
just cut that entire profile. He'll cut it halfway one direction, then it'll lift up, move all the way down by the chuck, and then come back and cut the other direction.
Well, one thing that would probably help Jim or anybody with the Onefinity in particular, because I think this is a maybe a drawback of the Mazzo and how it
Mhm.
handles the A axis, which is what you would plug your rotary into, is that with the stock post processor for the Onefinity Mazzo machine for Vectric, let's say you do an hour long cut, and it may, you know, if you've learned how to do a constant rotation, just a normal basic rotary operation is going to spin 360 degrees, go back 360 degrees. It's no different if you were going left to right, left to right. If you were doing a 2D cut, this is what it's doing. It's going back and forth. There is
Hmm.
one operation where you can do a continuous spinning
Hmm.
as the bit cuts, and it shaves a ton of time
Hmm.
off of your cut time. But the only drawback of it is that it has to unwind. And I learned that the hard way. So if you have an hour long cut, and you'll see on the DRO, when it's done, the A axis will be, the plot will be like 100 million or something ridiculous
Yeah.
number that has traveled. And when that operation is over, you have to wait until it unwinds, unless you just,
Well,
hit the E stop or hit stop button and start over.
um, talk to Milo about that because he's got a little addition to the G code to where it'll just reset zero and won't unwind.
That's what I was going to say. I was able to do that, and it
Uh huh.
fixed it like that. That's why Milo's, he's an evil genius. I don't know how he
He
figured this
is.
stuff out, but
He is. The man is. He's on top of it. But in talking with him, I had him on as a guest on my members only side 2 nights, 2 weeks in a row. It's real easy to get lost because he starts talking over my head, and I'm like, Milo, help me surface, please. You're way over
hmm
my head here because you're talking about modifying post processors. Then you're talking about cheating the system. Um, see, Wade Custon said it's a spiral profile toolpath.
that's right.
No, it's not.
Well,
Well, it depends on what it is. It
yeah,
depends
when
on what it is.
the continuous spin that I was just mentioning, that's
Yeah.
actually a Milo Scott hack, another
Uh-huh.
hack, and it's one of the gadgets. It's a spiral tool path that you actually apply to a 3D carve.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That's what he's talking about there. So
Yeah. Yeah. That is some of it. Yes.
yeah,
But I mean, it the guy has got so many tricks up his sleeve.
yeah, he's amazing.
I don't know how he. I mean, I would think the sleeves would rip. So, okay. So, we've been going for about an hour. What is next for M&S Woodworks? What's the next? I know you talked about a chess set.
hmm
What's the next big move? Is that going to be the chess set, or is it going to be something else? Or
That it's not set in stone, but
Mhm.
that's what's been interesting me here lately. I haven't, excuse me, I haven't done anything on the rotary in quite a while, and I kind of miss it, playing around
Mhm.
with it. And that's what I do. I don't make anything to sell,
Mhm. Same
because
here.
I want this to remain enjoyable. Anything that becomes a job and you start having,
Yeah.
time crunches and stuff like that, I don't want my
Yeah.
shop to be somewhere I don't want to go. So it's just whatever suits my fancy. And right now, I think a rotary operation is in order. Couple other ideas. I'm fixing to do some renovations around my house.
Ah.
So it may be another month or two before I get a video out. But and the reason why another reason is because I've seen some huge interest in the rotary stuff with
Mhm.
Winfinity's release of their new
Yes.
rotary axis. So I'm starting to see more and more questions. So I may make another video and probably try to add a little bit more math to it to help some folks out. So
If I may make a suggestion, even a short video, if the situation arises, on how you make those miters, like you were talking about.
okay, yeah.
That's. I mean, people dig that kind of thing,
hmm
and I can't do this by myself.
hmm
I don't
And it's
have time.
and it's stupid simple. I mean, you'll actually laugh when you see how easy it is.
Yeah.
I saw a question earlier: how many passes do you make? It's just a simple profile tool pass,
Hmm.
and to be able to go back and forth depending on whatever you set your depth of cut at in the
Hmm.
bit settings. So
Okay.
generally 4 or 5 passes for something that's half an inch thick is safe.
Yeah.
So
They're not going to go slinging that piece across the room.
no, I hide under the table when it's running. At least for the big
Well.
one. I mean, the small V bits, no, but this
Mhm.
thing, I mean, it whir. I mean, you can hear
Yeah.
it's like a helicopter.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Scott, you could ask for a Onefinity rotary just to demonstrate it for them. He's already got a rotary.
Yeah, I got a rotary, but I'm sure I know what Center's talking about. Onefinity's tight, man. You know, I get offers all the time,
Yeah.
sponsorship offers. You know, I get some cool offers, and then sometimes I get dog collars. You
Yeah.
know, hand lotion, stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with woodworking. But Onefinity, they're not quick to sponsor anybody.
That's a great topic. What is the weirdest sponsorship deal you've ever been offered?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the dog collars. They were shot collars. You know, of course, I know that's, you know, that's a controversial thing right there. A lot
Yeah.
of folks think that shot collars are evil, but it was shot collars. Um, had an baby toys.
Yeah.
I had some baby toys, like they wanted me to review baby toys, and we're talking about little plastic things that babies play with.
Hmm.
I got a couple that were what I suspect are scams.
Oh, I've
You
got
know,
several that were scams that I
yeah,
know were scams.
yeah.
Uh, uh,
But the coolest one to date is my laser. I am so grateful and blessed for that thing. You know, I thought I had sincerely arrived when I, you know, got that. But
well,
um,
looking at that laser, you have arrived. If they sent you that laser, you
yeah,
have arrived
yeah.
because that was
I've
not a cheap laser.
no, it's not. And I've actually got my too big for my britches, and actually sent them email wanting another one. I'd love to have a fiber laser.
Hmm.
That's something I've never made a video about, but I like working with metal. I've got a metal
Hmm.
lathe, a small one, you know,
Yeah.
and I would love to have a fiber laser to engrave in some metal and whatnot, but they haven't. I don't guess, you know, I don't produce enough viewership to warrant that kind of money. So
Don't know. Don't know. I
yeah,
mean, and um, they the worst that can happen is they say no.
and they
You got
did.
nothing to lose. I have two channel members that have fiber lasers, and some of the three channel members that have fiber lasers, and some of the stuff they're putting out is just
Oh
jaw
yeah,
dropping, fantastic.
the technology is moving so fast, man.
Yeah.
Just a year ago, just a year ago, fiber lasers were in their infancy. Now there's actually two or three different types of fiber. You got MOPA.
Hmm.
I can't even think of all the names. You know, so
Yeah.
what's going to be in another year? That's what I'm looking forward to.
Oh, okay. Okay. The weirdest, the weirdest sponsorship pitch that I've received was for false eyelashes and makeup.
You know, I think I would have bought some just to see you in eyelashes and makeup, Mark.
And they word it. You could tell this is just a cut and paste kind of thing, copy and paste kind of thing. It was so well laid out. It was so well worded, and they praised my channel. And I think we would make a good match. And I'm thinking to
Yeah.
myself, what in the history of the almost 700 videos on my channel made you think that we would be a good match? I mean, but yeah, I turn down stuff all the time. A lot of them I wish I would have taken. A couple of them I wish I would have taken. You were saying that Onefinity is pretty tight. I was in a chat for, I don't remember who it was, somebody else's live stream talking, and one of the guys from Onefinity was in that same chat. And they asked, Mark, is that plywood CNC the only machine you have? And I said, yeah. And they said, well, not anymore. Check your email. And they had offered me a Onefinity CNC. I had to politely turn them down
Hmm.
because this was in it was in UPS's hands. It was
Hmm.
on its way to me. And my arrangement with Avid CNC is machine exclusivity. They have to be the only CNC in my
Oh
shop.
yeah.
I said, that's not an issue. I don't have room for another CNC in my shop. But
Well, you know,
I
I think
have,
what Onefinity has done. I mean, they've probably who is it? oh, good grief, I can't even remember the YouTube guys that were there was Myers Woodshop. He was
Uh-huh.
actually how I discovered the Onefinity. I think
Yeah,
they may have made a deal with him.
that's possible.
I think I had heard in some quiet conversations that they
Hmm.
didn't give him that machine, but they gave it. He bought it at a discount.
Yeah.
That's what they do because they actually have their own YouTube channel and their own YouTube personality.
Hmm.
And I think that that's what they're hoping to get their message out with. But
Yeah.
it's Myers and another guy. I keep wanting to call him Gilbert, but that ain't it.
Hamilton Dilbeck.
Dilbert. Yep. That's him. He's done some Winfinity stuff. But
Yeah.
I saw him. He was showcasing another brand the other day.
I don't
Um,
know.
what's the new? It's not the long mill. What's the
Alt
new
mill.
one? Alt mill. I think
Alt mill.
he did an alt mill not long
Yeah.
ago. So
Well,
yeah, that's a guy that's come a long way.
yes, he has. Yes, he
Hamilton
has.
Dilbeck, yeah. I'm proud for him. He's
Mhm.
come a long way in a short period of time because I
Um,
remember watching him, sawdust piled up as high as a table
yeah.
behind him, and crashing his CNC machine. That's somebody that showed his mistakes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so I had to politely, thank Onefinity, but turn them down because I wasn't ready to announce this was on its way. And Avid does the same thing. They did not give me this machine. It still belongs to them. But at the end of 3 years, I can buy it at a drastically reduced price. But if I cheesed them off or if I screwed up or something like that, they'd come with a truck, pick it up today. It still belongs to them.
mm-hmm,
So that they call that being a creator partner. So, but they've done that with several people. I mean, they did that with Jay Bates, and then at the end of I think Jay had his for 4 years. He sold it to Greg of STL Woodworking. He's the guy who bought it. So he's got Jay Bates's old CNC router, which was like I think it was a 5 wide by 12 foot, 5 by 12, where mine's a 4 by 4. So, but yeah, I've received a few scams. Toblerone. I'm like, how much candy? I mean, it would be fun to put one on the Rotary and see what happens, but I mean, Toblerone ain't gonna reach out to me. Perrier ain't gonna reach out to me.
mm-hmm,
There was a brand of laser. I don't remember what brand it was, but I looked them up, and their cheapest laser, they start at like $6,000. And I'm like, ain't no way you're going to send me a $6,000 laser. Number one, I don't believe I don't believe this is real, and I really can't remember the name of the laser. And number two, I got no place to put it.
mm-hmm.
So thanks, but no thanks. So ah, inside joke. Wade Custon says, "I hear Coffee Crisp may want in." That's a Canadian candy bar that I absolutely love. And I got one store here locally that stocks them on occasion. And when they have them, I go in and I buy a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, same with Maltesers. Anyway, um, so yeah, it gets kind of weird. So, I was gonna say something else and I can't remember what it was, but that's all right. So the next big thing to look for from Scott is something on the rotary, probably a chess set, right? Okay.
Unless somebody requests something different, I'm all for being challenged.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm still dealing with shingles, and
Mm-hmm.
it's my right arm. Of course, I'm right-handed. My right arm just does what it wants to do when it wants to do it, and sometimes it actually will do what I want it to do, but there's some negotiations there. So, uh, probably what's coming up for me is a lot of guests, and I want to say thank you very much for being my first, Scott. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about? Anything you wanted to say? Anything I should have asked you but didn't?
Mm-mm. The only thing I would say, if there's any of my guys that, any of my followers, a thousand times thank you. You know,
Yeah.
I appreciate the support and all the kind words, and that's what keeps me coming back to YouTube. And it certainly ain't the money, as I mentioned earlier. But I get so much accolades and everything on the comment section. It's an ego thing. It makes you
Hmm.
feel good.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad I
No
can
doubt.
help some folks. And I get tons of emails from folks all the time. And I do my best to answer as many as I can.
Yeah.
But I'm truly thankful for the audience that I have, you know. And as always,
Amen.
thank you. Thank you. I've mentioned this before. You're my hero.
Oh, well, I'm just some guy in a garden shed, man. Um, I, I have a major philosophical problem with presuming to try to teach something I've never done myself. That's why
Hmm.
there are a lot of gaps in what I present on YouTube
Hmm.
because I just haven't done it. And so I want to bring on people who have done the things that I haven't done. I've never done the stacked inlay, the stacked veneer uh, coffee table like you made. I've never done anything like that. I saw that, and I think that video was a sleeper. Y'all need to go over to Scott's channel, M&S Woodworks, link in the description, and check out his projects. I mean, he's got everything in there from laser engraving glass to, yeah, uh, ingrain inlays, making that box for his chess set, and then making the chess set. A lot of rotary projects, a lot of inlay projects. Scott, I mean, you're an artist with this stuff, and
Oh, bless
I
you, buddy. Thank you.
really, I really, really appreciate you taking time out of your Sunday. It's Mother's Day, especially,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you taking the time.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome here anytime. You ever want to come on, just yank my chain, and I'll pop you a link.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed it,
Uh,
man. Thank you.
well, you're very welcome. Channel members, tomorrow night we had a little bit of a change in plans simply because my guest is out of town. My proposed guest is out of town, so we're going to change lobsters and dance, as Lewis Carroll would say. We'll jump over and we're going to work on a cribbage board with Kurt from Crafty Jans. We're going to work on some cribbage board layouts, and I think you'll find it interesting. This will be stuff that can be done in Aspire and in VCarve. So it's not an Aspire only program. If you don't know what I'm talking about or you want information on how to become a channel member, you'll find down below this video panel a little button that says join. Click on that. Another video is going to play that'll tell you all about channel membership. Then you can decide whether you want to join or not. From there, we've got a great group of people, some of the best people I've had the pleasure of meeting, and I'm truly blessed to be able to associate with them. Some very talented folks, be it CNC or laser or 3D printing, and these guys are just phenomenal. So I say guys as a collective, men and women. We're all about helping each other succeed, and it's a great group. We'd love to have you join. For everybody else, next week I have Brad Haugen from Brad's Signs. If you've not seen his stuff on Facebook or on YouTube, look up the channel Brad's Signs. I'll put a link in the description as soon as we're done. And he's going to talk to us about his niche that he has found creating some absolutely glorious projects with epoxy, with a painted MDF, various other mediums, all combined to make one huge, fantastic project. So that's going to be next Sunday. And I think that's it. Anything else you want to add there, Scott?
I'm good, man.
All right. Well, thank you very much for spending part of your Sunday with us. And y'all take care.